last session of today's class, we'll be talking about project management in finance. Project management in finance. Our trainer is already on the call. Please permit me to just read his profile. I know that some of you must have already known him. But for the purpose of those who have not heard him speak before, permit me to read his profile one more time. All right, so the person who will be taking us on the last session of today's class is Adebayo Afuwape. He's a project manager, value creator, a champion for project success. Adebayo is result-driven, passionate about adding tangible value to systems and processes, resolving challenges and helping organizations achieve their project objectives efficiently. He is a project manager in Panoramic Synergy Enterprises Limited with experience in leading teams in successful projects and a member of the Project Management Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, with a clapping of hand in the chat room, please let's welcome our last trainer for today, who will be taking us on project management in finance. Mr. Adebayo, if you are there, please, you can take it off from here. Welcome.
All right. Good afternoon,
Mr.
everyone.
Adebayo, are you there? All right,
Good
welcome,
afternoon,
welcome.
everyone. Thank you, Mercy, for the introduction. Um, all right. Just bringing up the slides for today's lesson. Okay, so today we're actually looking at finance in project management, not project management in finance, actually.
Thank you
Sorry?
for
All right.
thank you
Just
for the
like
correction. Yeah.
you're welcome. It's more of like play on words. So, we just concluded the business case class, and in a bit of it, we actually saw that you cannot actually do business case. You cannot come up with a business case without actually having to discuss some part of or factor in some part of finance in it. And finance when it comes to project management, because having done your business case, eventually when that investment or becomes that business case is approved, and then the investment becomes a project. Because I remember there was a question, if is the business case only for investments? When the business case is approved, the investment becomes a project. And then technically, you would say for every project, yes, there's a business case. For every investment, so far as it has a start date and an end date, it is a project. So it can always have a business case. Yeah, so coming into finance in project management, this is actually one of the domains for the PM Book 8. And part of the things we would actually be looking in or looking at would be a bit of an understanding about or an overview of how finance is seen, understanding value when it comes to finance. Is it about the money or what we get out of it? Money concepts, the four processes, then some of the measuring performance concepts, and then how we also need to tailor our approach of financing and the use of AI. I know to a large extent people are concerned about AI nowadays, and yes, we'll talk about it but there wouldn't be a demonstration here. But I can also give recommendations around some of the tools you can actually use. All right. So within the PM book, the Project Management's Body of Knowledge, version 8, we have 40 processes. And in these 40 processes, we have, alongside the 40 processes, we have 7 domains. And one of the domains is actually, what's the name? Finance. And finance comes in when we are talking about initiating, we are planning, we are executing, and then there's the monitoring and control aspects that also comes um, in play when it comes to finance. The initial concept of it, or the initial part where it comes in, is in the business case that was formally discussed. All right, so this domain actually focuses around or finance, yeah, the finance domain. We are not discussing finance as finance in itself, but we're actually looking at finance domain within the body of knowledge and then how it applies to project management. So that's why I said it is finance in project management. So we are concerned about, this domain is concerned about the processes and tools that are actually used for in relation to finance, especially internal and external aspects when it comes to the monies, how the monies also need to, how they come to play within and across a project. Actually, the goal here is not to actually be looking at um, financial reports, but rather making use of the reports on finances to actually make productive decisions, to make decisions about the status of the project. Um, are we running under budget? Are we going over budget? The planned amount of the project budget in itself, will it be able to fulfill the obligations of the project, or we need to source for more funds? So part of the things to actually consider here would be the planning and estimating, budget and funding. Planning and estimating, initially, there are different techniques to actually do estimating. But firstly, we need to know, okay, if we are to build a house, or if we are to actually run an event, we have an idea of, firstly, a proposal has been written around that and it has been approved. Good. Now, this event is going on. And then we're actually looking at how much will it cost, or what do we need to get this project done? That is the planning. Estimating now goes into what are the things that would be coming into ensuring that we are able to get this job done. So we analyze, we break down the different activities that are going to fit into this, and then we look at the costs. Now, there are different ways costs can actually be gotten. The techniques are also there. Then we have this summed up with some bit of reserves, bring up or come to amount to the budget. Now, with the budget, we then also look into where do we get the funds to actually get this done? And when will the money be available? That is very important, because sometimes, as we will come to see later in during the slides, along the line, there are different ways of generating funds. So you also need to factor in what's approach. How are you getting your funds? And would they be available when they are needed? It is very important. These are some of the concerns of finance in project management. Now, procurement, what are the things that you actually need to that needs to be gotten? What are the contract types that are in place? For this would also be broken down later. Then at the end of the day, like I said, it is not about measuring, tracking, and all. Are we able to get value for the money that was spent? It is very, very important. We should be able to check where the money, where we are on the project, the money allotted to it. Are we working within the allocation for that phase, or we've gone beyond it? Or where it cannot be measured, because sometimes we have tangible and intangible, where it cannot be measured immediately, then we should have also put in different metrics to check that we are able to get value or realized value based on that project. All right, so there is also something that we need to factor in here. You see, sometimes projects go in and they can be by themselves bringing about value, or they are part of another project or a larger program. So, off immediately, they may not bring in their own value when they belong to another part of a program. That would be, for example, a component is being made to be a part of a larger software. You cannot say that you want to start measuring the value that that particular component has actually brought in, because it will not achieve its value unless it becomes a part of the larger software. So when we come to budget compliance versus financial success, to a large extent, many people have their idea that they need to want to ensure that the project we underspend on the project. We want to maintain the timeline. We want to maintain the project allocation for these particular amounts. We don't want to overspend. Yes, it is good. But the truth about it is overspending and not realizing the appropriate value for what you spent on doesn't make sense. I am not saying we must overspend. The focus here is the value of what was spent on. Was it realized? The essence of that project goes beyond the financial impact that brought it to birth. So if we are improving on its process within an organization, or we are upgrading, for example, and we commit as an organization or as a client, we commit to this project and we put in some amount of money. Are we saying, are we concerned about, are we just concerned, not that are we concerned, are we just concerned about how much was put into it, irrespective of if it achieves the purpose for which that project was actually done? Or we are concerned about how much we put into it to ensure that we get the value for which that project was actually done. So it's not just about budget compliance. You are expected to spend X amount of millions on this project, and you are breaking down, making sure, cutting. Sometimes the impact of that is that we will need to cut, or to reduce costs. It may affect the scope of the project. Some part of the project may not be fulfilled. When challenges come on that project regarding risks or delays, or let's say increase in price, you cannot actually go beyond the factors because of the budget allocation, except there is contingencies have been put in place for that particular project, yeah, purpose. So it is very important that, like I said, the benefits of the project is what is important. All right. So when we are actually looking at the financial performance, these are actually often built around three factors. We've actually spoken about these three factors. Um, yes, the costs, the initial costs, planned costs. Then we have the funding. And like I mentioned, there are different ways of getting our funding. Is it internally generated? Is it grants or donor funding? Is it time tied to cash availability or dependent on the contract types? Let For the value proposition, we are actually concerned, just like I mentioned, the benefits. What's the money we've actually put in? What were we able to achieve with it? Not the project in itself, but like I said before, the project as all or was initiated to fulfill certain benefits. Sometimes customer satisfaction, sometimes um, upsell and resell. Sometimes it is brand reputation. So these are some of the areas that fall under the intangibles, where yes, some uh, some processes or some things were actually developed during the course of that investment, that project, to achieve an end goal. So as project managers, it is very important for us not just to focus on the deliverables of the project, but also to help ensure that the goal for which the project was actually uh, granted, for why it was approved, is achieved. And that is one of the things where um, projects or the financial performance also comes to play. Now, when we speak about value, have actually said we have the tangibles, we have the non-tangibles. Some of these concepts were also mentioned in the business case, where you have the return on investments, you have the payback period. So, for example, we would say that the return on investment, we are concerned about how long it will, or yeah, how soon or how long it will take us to get back the money we've actually put into this project. For the net present value, it is looking at the present value of what we've been able to achieve. Where we are now, what is the value? So far as it is not zero, it is good. For the internal rate of return, we are actually trying to see
Thank you. Is it me?
Good afternoon, everyone. I think Mr. Adebayo has been disconnected by network, so please let's wait a while he tries to rejoin the call.
Sorry, everyone. My internet's powered down. Okay, let's get back to class. Please, where did I stop? Oh, where did I get off the call?
You're trying to explain IRR.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. So for the internal rate of return, we are looking at measuring how okay we are, not to ensuring that we are not doing too bad on the project. And especially when it comes to the the financial expenditure. Then when it comes to the payback period, we are concerned about how long it is going to take us to get to complete or get back the money put in. So if, for example, or get back the investment put into the project. So if 10 million naira has actually been put in a project or 100 million, where do we break even? That is actually the concern. How long after this project? Because during the project, we are spending, but we're actually trying to figure out how long after the project or after the investment would we be able to break even. For return on investments or return on assets, we are actually looking at not just the initial investments, but returns on all the what's the name now? All the ancillary resources that we actually used to uh, get that project done or complete that investment. It is possible that the initial capital was 100 million, but additional resources, getting plants to power it, um, how will I put it down? Bringing on new staff or sending the old staff on training so that this project becomes operational. Those are also additional costs to ensure that we are able to get value for that investment that was made. And you're actually looking at the return on the general assets that were actually used to actually get this. And then how much investments would this bring me? Because it is not just around the initial payback, and then figuring out the total cost, but also how long or how much investment or returns on investments I would be getting back based on the total cost. Then for the return on average capital employed, we want to actually understand, or we would be for that. What we want to get is how well the money that was used will work well, and they have their calculations. Um, some of these are not the concerns during this class. For the intangibles, we've actually spoken about, okay, for example, innovations and capital building, capacity building, capability building. Yeah, some of these, the CSR that is being done and the social impact, community and social impacts, sometimes we cannot measure um, immediately what that's or track the measure around that. But we also want to ensure that there is a positive rating. Those ones the intangible values may not bring about financial implications, but we're actually looking at the positive value that investment will be bringing us in terms of these other areas. So that's the difference between the tangible values and the intangible values. And like I said, we have certain calculations. There are ways to actually calculate this. They have their formula of how to actually get this. So okay, so let me do this. I'll pick. Let's see. Okay. I'll pick the return on investments, and let's look at if an investment was actually done or a project was actually carried out for 50 million and the net benefit was, or let's see, I think if it's ChatGPT you want to use, if it is calculator you want to use, let's actually bring out whatever tools we want to use and see how this actually plays out. I would want us to actually give feedback around this. So a project of 50 million.
All this way I thought it was.
Of 50 million naira, or the project cost. Let's put it as the project cost is 50 million naira.
Okay, I'm done almost.
And it brought us a net benefit, or with a net benefits of 7.5 million. What's is the return on investment? I'll take it again. The project, we have a project that costs us 50 million naira with a net benefit of 7.5 million naira. What is the ROI?
%.
You said, please.
15%.
15%. Thank you. So in a similar way, we can actually work around this to have an idea of, fortunately, if we are using any of the AI tools, I hope it gave you a breakdown of the calculation, or if you worked it this way. How did you go about it?
You already gave the formula. So 7.5 divided by 50 million times 100.
All right. All right, thank you. So we have the formula for this, and we can always bring about possible projects and use this to just have an idea around them. I have a couple of slides, and I don't want to take too much of the time. All right, so we also have, whilst looking at the finances, there are three areas that actually are important, and that is the economic benefits, the social benefits, and the environmental benefits, or the economic impact, the social impact, and the environmental impact. So it is important that in whatever project we're actually doing, we ensure that these areas are actually considered, or there is a focus on that too. This is to ensure that whilst we make profits, or whilst we vie to make profits, we don't harm people, or we don't harm the planet. So, speaking about funding, it is important to know that there are actually different ways to actually get money for, or get funding for our projects. Like I said, there can be internal budget. We can also have the customer contracts. That's as based on the terms and conditions, yes, we can actually get fundings with that to support the project. If there are grants or and donors or crowdfunding, depending on the kind of project in which it is very important that we get to identify which or what combination we would be using and how they would be coming to play in terms of providing us the necessary funds when it comes to the project. So part of the constraints that may sometimes come around with projects or finances within projects, or bringing about funding and expenditure, comes around the capital expenditure, expenditure now, capital expenditure, and then the operational expenditure. What falls under capital expenditure, and then what falls under operational expenditure. Sometimes during the project, or not even sometimes during the project, right from the start of the project, it should be defined what monies go into capital expenditure and what monies go into operational expenses. Now, along the line of a project, for example, if we have a snag, for example, there is a drill, or they are drilling or the project needs what's the name now? Not necessarily drilling. The project needs a new asset for it to be able to go beyond because of certain challenges. For example, excavation is being done, pipelines are being installed, and then it was unknown. The kind of rock that was actually met along the way was actually beyond the capacity of the tools that were being used, and there's a need to actually get a new tool. Now, does that fall under capital expenditure or operational expenditure?
Capital expenditure.
Capital expenditure. Thank you, because we're actually getting an asset to continue to use for that project. So when we also have the project budgets versus the cost baseline. Now, whilst the cost baseline falls within the project budget, the project budget is like the overall sum of all monies allocated and approved for that project. However, the cost baseline is the planned money approved for a particular phase of that project. So even if we have, because there are certain parts that fall within the cost baseline that do not, especially the management reserve, that is left to top management or steering committee or the board to actually decide on when or to release that amount. They have that extra reserve put aside to address the unknown unknowns. But for every possible risk, every possible activity identified, allocations would have been estimated, and a project budget is actually made with, like I said, contingency reserve. Now, with the contingency reserve is to help cushion off uncertainties, the risks, and it is approved for a phase, or for different phases, depending on. So the most important monies or allocation that a project manager will be working with, the planned cost is the cost baseline, not the project budget. I hope that is clear. There are two amounts of one-time provided.
Yeah, sorry, please. We need that line to run again so that we can understand the most important money the project manager can use. Let me just get that one.
Okay. The most important money the project manager can use. There's actually a breakdown. That was the slide I wanted to actually, I thought that was the next slide. All right. The most important money the project manager should always track, especially for variance, is the cost baseline. That is the most important money to it, because it has a calculation of the estimates for the project and the contingency reserve that he has authority to actually work with. So when we are calculating variance, we're actually looking at, now we also said it is time-phased, which means that it can be put on, okay, for phase one, this is the amount allocated for it. For this particular, within this phase, as at 20%, this is the amount that is expected to have been spent. As at 50%, this is the amount planned for 50%. As at 75%, this is the amount planned to have been spent. and 100%, this is the total cost that has been approved for that particular project or that particular phase. Now, what the project manager is always or would always be working with is to align with the planned costs that is expected to be spent. And always check, the planned cost I have said is the cost baseline that is approved for that particular place, for that particular level. So, and align with that on whether there's overspending or underspending in line with the schedule of the project. Does that make it a bit clearer? Or does it make it clearer?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So, okay, I mentioned contingency, or I also mentioned contingency and management reserves. So, ordinarily, aside from the cost of the activities themselves, their activities may be the different work packages that will be done, the different artisans, groups, every work that needs to be done, there is already an estimate of what that cost would be. Then there is a certain percentage that is assigned as a buffer, especially for the known risks. For management reserve, that is reserved and would only be granted by the board or top management, or that is within their own purview. So it is when occasions call for it, a formal request needs to be made by the project manager to help them, to let them know that the budgets or the monies that we have that has been allocated for this will not be able to take care of this because there is this that we did not factor in, or this experience, just like I mentioned the other time, there was a snag in the project, something that was not known before, and it will bring about additional cost. They needed to get a new asset or something like that, and it wasn't factored into the initial budget. So there's a need for release of funds to get this done so that projects can actually proceed. So there is the role of the contingency, focus, known risks, handled by the project manager. For the unknown, handled by management and needs formal approval to get it released. So, whilst I mentioned also, while calculating the cost baseline, there are actually different methods to actually get this done. But oftentimes, the bottom-up estimating gives us, let me say, 90% correctness around the amounts that may be used. However, when you have a project that has multiple hundreds of tasks and activities, it is going to cost a lot of time to actually get the calculations done. So there are other options using similar projects to have an estimate and then factoring in a percentage, or using the PET system, 3-point estimates. That's the most likely optimistic and pessimistic calculation. Yes, that is also there. So for this, part of, just as explained before, the initial work packages have actually been calculated. So here we'll be calculating from the bottom and going upwards. So the cost baseline includes the work packages, the different cost of different activities, alongside the project's contingency reserve. That is actually what brings about the cost baseline. Then outside that, we have the management reserve that inclusive of the cost baseline brings about the entire project budget. When it comes to the domain that we actually speak within the project's management body of knowledge, 4 areas, we actually said that the planning, we have to plan the financial management. So we have the planning, we have the estimating, we have to develop the budget, and we have to monitor and control it. How this works, initially, we have to put in place right from the start, define how we ensure practically everything about how the finances for that project is going to go. It has to be planned out. How we would source for our funds, how the budgets would be done, monitoring and controlling, at what points, what are the expected times for the fundings, who and where would the money be coming in from, who is responsible for doing what is the allocation for the budgets that should fall under that should fall for the contingency reserve, and then what percentage, that's in terms of percentage, because they are often calculated in percentages. What percentage should fall under management reserve? What percentage should fall under contingency reserve? And then at what points are the project manager or project managers, because it is possible for you to have multiple project managers, at what points are they allowed to go beyond the approved amount for that particular phase, while still working within that's just possibly eating into the contingency reserve, but at certain limits, under what conditions? So everything needs to have been planned from the start, which gives guidance into what goes on. Then the activity of estimating costs goes on. Then developing the budget in itself goes on. Then at the end, there are now the monitoring and controlling of the finances. And don't let us forget, it is not just about the monies, but it is about the value being achieved in that. I think, okay, so here we have the ICTOs that actually speak to each of these processes. So for the first, we have the tools and techniques. I'll actually focus on the tools and techniques themselves. Expert judgment. While planning, we can actually use the expert judgment, data analysis, meetings and workshops, having people within a room and then having discussions, reviewing, okay, based on the last project, based on what they already know, okay, what does this cost, or what will this cost? Or what was the cost of this? The cost of petrol at the moment is this 1,300 within this area. But if you move to this area, it is around this. So let's plug it at, okay, 1,004, because we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. Financial policies reviews, those two, dependent on the organization, can always affect how monies or funding can actually impact a project. Then approval threshold mapping. At what points do we need approvals? What approvals are allowed for who and at what points? So that's actually for this. Like we've said, this establishes the rule of the game. Then the processes themselves, analogous estimating parametric estimating, bottom-up estimating. Bottom-up estimating is the one that was actually shown there. 3-point estimating, I actually mentioned that too. Then reserve analysis, and then cost of quality. This also is important. I'm looking at the slides against the time. I have like 10 minutes and we are just about halfway. All right, so where we have the explanations around the different estimating techniques, or some of the estimating techniques. Parametrics using statistics relationship alongside quality. The 3-point estimating, the focus here is actually understanding when we should actually use them. For okay, we have a standard sorry? Okay, not me. So here we have the 3-point estimating in practice. There is the one that oftentimes is expected or automatically falls for the standard PMI exam. That is the optimistic plus 4 times most likely plus pessimistic divided by 6. But sometimes you have a triangular distribution and a PERT standard deviation that also comes in. Now, whilst developing developing budgets, it's we have different tools and techniques that can actually be used. Cost aggregation, as we've actually said. Historical information review can also be used. Expert judgments can also be used. When it comes to funding and grants, grants, yes, we may have what is called the funding limits allocation. So that too may also come in. Then when it comes to the monitor and control finances, we need to actually focus on realigning. What this is concerned about is realigning our expenses. We track and record the expenses, we check for variances, and we realign to ensure that we are either able to get back to the budget at completion, which was actually planned, the budget that was actually marked out for completion, or if there is a need to add, let the project sponsor know that we've actually overrun the budget due to these reasons. I will be needing, this is going to be the new value to bring about the completion of the project. So there's a need for additional funding. So it is very important that this is done, and that is actually done around forecast and replan. Then corrective actions are ensured to maintain and achieve budget at completion. So at this point, we are actually going into the end value management. This has a bit of calculations, but we would have a run through and also look at 1 or 2 areas where AI can actually help. So we have the planned value. Here we have the 3 baseline variables or variables. The planned value shows what was planned right from the start. What is supposed to bring us to completion right from the start. The end value shows how much. So the planned value says this is how much is supposed to be spent for this particular phase. The end value says how much has what we have spent brought us, how much worth have we gotten from what we have spent. And then the actual cost shows how much is it that we have actually spent. So let's look at something. So put it in context, we are actually working at we plan to have 100 units of work done at 10 naira each, but 80 units have been done. Now we have spent 900 naira. The question then is, what is our planned value? What is our, what's the name now? What is our end value? And what is the spent value? So let me see how to get into the classroom. Did you get that? Did you get what I said?
Please, can you come again with your question?
So I said we plan to get 100 units of work done at 10 naira. And then 80 units have actually been done. However, we have spent 900 naira.
So is it 100 units at 10 naira each?
Yes,
Or
100
at 10
units
naira?
at 10 naira each. Sorry, because I'm sharing my screen, I'm having difficulty getting chat room. Where is... Anyway, all right. So if we say what is based on what I've just read or what I've just said, okay, this is another example. Based on what I've just said, what is the planned value for that project? 100 units at 10 naira is how much?
1,000.
1,000. But we have done 80 units.
800.
800. 800 is what here now?
That's the end one.
That's the end value. However, we have spent 900 naira. That is the actual cost. I hope you get the difference in that analogy.
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. So the next, okay, so we have another example here. This goes, becomes more elaborate. But let me explain the different areas here. So we have the BAC, which is budget at completion. I've actually mentioned something around that before. So the example here says at a 5 million road project is 6 months into a 10 months plan. By the 6th month, the plan says 60% of work should be done. Actually, 50% is complete. The project has spent 2.9 million. So it's something similar to what we just described. We have the budget as completion, which is the, what's the name now? We can also refer to as the cost baseline. And then we are looking at the planned value. There is now a calculation around the planned value because we want to actually get how much of is meant to have been spent. The planned value at 6 months or 6 months into, yes, 60% is calculated to actually get that. Then we have the end value, which also has its own calculation. We've been able to get this. The CV is the cost variance, and the SV is the schedule variance. Now we further have the cost performance index and the schedule performance index. Then the EAC is the estimate as completion because there was actually at the end of the day, the calculation actually brought us to identify that, oh, we will be needing extra funds. So how much would we need to actually get this done? That is actually the estimate as completion added to it. And then the to complete performance index. How much of work do we need to do for every dollar or every naira that is spent on that project? That is now as different from what was initially spent. So it's possible that the value of work done was 1-for-1 or less than 1, which shows that we need to now spend more, get more value out of the extra 1 naira, out of the ongoing 1 naira that we would actually be achieving on that project. And sometimes that is difficult to achieve. So we for forecasting, we have forecasting the final cost. Here it's not about the focus here is not about the calculations, but rather when we have situations, what formula should we have? So when we have a project that falls within the previous or a known past efficiency, or what I'll call a similar project that has actually been done, we can actually use the first option. When we want to be optimistic around how the rest of the project is going to go, we go through the second one. But when we are not sure and we are actually looking at the worst case scenario, we use the third option. That is the essence of this area. Then, for a project manager, when data around finances are actually brought up, after the whole calculations that are being done, it's not just about the report that is important, but the decisions that are actually made based on this. On the dashboard, what is this? What should this be telling us? When we have the CPI, cost performance index, or the schedule performance index being at 1, at above 1, greater than 1, or less than 1. What is it? What is this really telling us? And what should the project manager be communicating to the stakeholder? That is the focus here. And that conversation is what we actually have in the lower part. When the cost variance is lower than 0 and the CPI is lower than 1, there's a cost problem. What should the project manager be telling the stakeholder? That is actually the focus we have here. And similarly, the others. Okay, so it is very important that dependent on the organization, we tailor the finance options that we have. Dependent on the industry, the approach or the type of project we're actually doing, the type of contracts in which we are actually working with, how we are generating our funds, and then the complexity of the project. It is important to actually factor these areas in and then align them to suit the project in itself. So the project management body of knowledge has actually given us a couple of pointers around how finance should be managed when it comes to project management. But this actually needs to be factored in or tailored to the particular project or the organization in which we are actually working with. When it comes to AI is going to help us to optimize a couple of things. Now, if we are saying we are looking at what tool is it, there are different tools. We can actually use ClickUp, we can use Write, as I mentioned last week. We can actually use Microsoft Copilot to assist us. It will help us with our estimations. It will help us with our what's the name? With some of our narrative reporting. It will help us in some areas, depending on the software, to identify when we are going out of line in terms of expenditure. It will align the reports and use them to update the dashboard. Yes, but the truth about it is, at the end of the day, the project manager still needs to go and review what has been updated or optimized by AI to ensure that accurate information was what brought about that conclusion, and then decisions that will be made by that will actually be done by the human being, not by AI. So while AI will help us to get our work sorted and properly organized, what we will communicate to the stakeholder is dependent on us. It will be our own interpretation. Whilst we may even get recommendations based on what AI will help us get or will give to us, we still need to translate it to the reality of the project as seen from our own eyes. So we spoke about contracts, and when it comes to procurement tied to contracts, we can actually have payments come in, or the projects be funded by fixed price or time and material contracts, or cost plus fixed fee contract. Now, they have their advantages. Fixed price, what you set out at the start is actually what the clients will pay. It's an agreement. You've said it is 65,000. You say it is 1.5 million. It pays 1.5 million. Whichever amount you spend on it is not his concern. Time and material, you keep track of how much time you are able to bring evidence that, okay, this is the amount of efforts that we've actually put in. These are the materials we actually put into this too. And then the client pays based on what is being audited. So if you don't have proper records, you don't get paid for it. That is how that works. When it comes to cost plus fixed fee, so there is a fixed fee that is to be paid, and then the it's more like you have the service charge, and then you have the cost of materials. So for every time in which you have people on that project, you have to pay that particular service charge. Imagine bringing in expatriates on a project and the project is being delayed. At the end of the day, the cost of that project or the delay still has to be paid for. The expatriate doesn't have a business with how long it took for whatever what's the name, indigenous problems that caused delays. His is sometimes he has a service charge, he has to get a professional fee, and then whatever resources he has also brought on in to get that job done has to actually be paid for. So sometimes we need to be very careful, or not just sometimes, we need to be careful about the implication of the contracts that the procurement arm of our finance is actually addressing, or that we are actually adopting for a project. Okay, let me skip this for time. We are way past already. 7 areas to actually avoid a lot of assumptions or practices. Confusions are around, okay, so measuring our projects around the total project baseline or project budget, the total budget as against cost baseline. We need to also always put in mind there is a cost baseline and there is the total budget. Unfortunately, some of us focus on total budgets and don't have a cost baseline, either in our daily lives or in our businesses. So We need to actually rethink this, realign it, and always ensure that there is a cost baseline and then there is the total budget or management reserve bringing about the project baseline in it. Single point estimates without ranges. So even when we are using having our estimates, it is very important that we also put in ranges, plus or minus, so that actually factors in and gives us a more realistic what's the name now? Estimate. Ignoring CAPEX and EPEX classifications until close of projects. Sometimes this will cause wahala. So let's avoid it. It needs to be planned right from the start. Confusing end value with actual cost. They are not the same thing. We've actually seen what this is. And sometimes, or not just sometimes, we need to begin to identify end value from our projects. We've spent so much time. We've spent X amount of time. What exactly is the value of what we've gotten? How much was supposed to have been spent? How much has been spent? What was meant to be spent? And what has actually been spent? So it is very important that we actually get this done. Then estimate as completion. Let me just go to the last one. Estimate as completion is not fixed. At the initial, we had the budget as completion. The estimate as completion has to be realigned to actualize the reality of the projects, or else we'll get stranded on that project. Yeah, further formula, and then basically the general summary. We've actually looked at finance, we've looked at value, we've looked at money in terms of CAPEX and OPEX. Yes, we've actually looked at the essence of planning, estimating, developing the budget, and monitoring and control. We looked at the end value management and some of the calculations and the importance of tailoring the controls to tailoring our finance to the projects. And this actually brings us to the close of the session. Let's remember that budget is not just about control. Delivering value is actually more important. So whatever it is we are doing, the value for which that work was actually done should be of paramount importance. Thank you very much. Any questions? Hello? Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? All right. The slides will be shared with you, I believe, so we can actually go back, revise them, and have better understanding. Mercy, thank you for the time. Thank you, everyone, for the extra time too.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adebayo. Please, let's appreciate our trainer. Thank you so much. We just want to appreciate the first, second, third, and fourth trainer for today, for their time, and for every one of you who have been consistent. And even those who are not consistent, there'll be no class without you. So thank you so much. My internet is actually very unstable, so the slides will be shared to you all as usual, as well as the YouTube link for today's recording. And then assessment also will be sent. Please remember, you are supposed to do your assessment before the next class. That being said, today makes it 8 weeks so far, meaning we've done we've done 6 assessments plus that of today. That will make it 7 assessments. So when you multiply that by 4, that means 4 assessments each Saturday. So when you multiply 7 by 4, you have 28 assessments so far. So please ensure you have done all of that. Also remember that you are to meet 60% of all assessments. When I say all assessment, it cuts across ISO, all the ISOs we've done so far, all the PEP we've done so far, the business analysis and the project management courses we've done so far. So you are to meet 60% of all of them, so that at the end of this program, you will not be found wanting, because anyone who falls below the requirement will not be graduating. So I'm saying this so that if you are yet to do any of your assessments, you can go back and do them. And anyone who did the assessment 2 to 3 weeks after the link was posted, please send us your screenshot so we can document your responses. Send us your screenshot. The reason for asking you to send your screenshot is because the assessment has already been recorded. So it will be too hectic to go back to get the assessment responses. So we need your screenshot only for those who did the assessment 2 to 3 weeks after the assessment link has been posted. All right. If you are yet to pay up your registration fee, please do so. Remember, we'll be ending the registration fee payment by the end of this month. And for those of us still having issues on the payment from Malawi and other countries, please be patient. The link to that payment for your payment is going to be ready anytime soon, and we'll get it across to you all. I think that will be all. Please follow us on all of our social media handles on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much. If there is any other announcement, you will hear from us in the WhatsApp group. Thank you so much, everyone, and do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye for now. Thank you, Mr. Adebayo.